I knew a woman who never took off her wedding dress. Written by polonium poisoning. Pauline was a sweet woman who lived across the street. We weren't close as kids or teenagers because she was around 5 years older than me, but our parents were friends. I think she babysat me when I was younger too. When my mother learned that Pauline was engaged, she sent me to help on the bridal shower. Poor mom. She thought I was like that because I was too often around boys and needed to learn to be more feminine. But she's got that backwards. That's when I first learned that Pauline and her soon to be husband had made a blood oath. The first to die comes and takes the other as soon as they can, she explained to me, swirling the ruby ring gently around her fingers. Isn't that too dramatic? What if you end up divorcing and marrying other people? We won't. We are soulmates, she assured me. Her naivete made her incredibly beautiful, but it felt really wrong being 21 and thinking that I was so much more mature than a 26-year-old. I didn't pursue the matter, but she kept talking about him in a dreamy tone. Aiden would like this, I wish Aiden was here, and so on. Her dreamy tone almost made me believe that soulmates existed, and that you could make the person you love the most follow you in death by just willing it. I met Pauline's friends, and we all ended up having some quality girl time. Pauline explained to us all how she believed that you can wake up in the afterlife and start controlling things with your mind. Of course, your memories will be hazy, she clarified, but that's why we made the blood oath, so we can remember. And how will one get the other back? I asked, entertaining her. I like to believe that we'll both grow wings. It was all terribly silly when I think back, but Pauline had something about her that made everyone pay attention and marvel at her words. And despite the age gap, we ended up becoming good friends. I think we were finally at an age where it didn't matter anymore. Since I was in college but lived with my parents and didn't need to work, I had a lot of spare time to accompany her to wedding dress fittings, cake tasting, and all the little things that were the world for the brides. But Pauline was a pleasant bride-to-be and never freaked out. She was just thrilled about marrying the man of her dreams and wanted to make it pretty if possible. Little by little, I grew to understand her devotion to Aiden, and he was just as crazy about her, if not more. When they were together, the world felt like a brighter and warmer place, like marshmallows slowly melting over my heart. The day of the wedding came, around half a year after her bridal shower. It was neither a big nor a small wedding. It felt like both Pauline and Aiden were able to invite exactly everyone they wanted around on their happiest day. Not one more, not one less. I felt somewhat honored to be there. Still, the happiest day never came. When Pauline arrived, belated as any bride should, there was whispering and disquiet. Aiden wasn't there yet. Her smile didn't falter because she was completely sure that he would never bail on her. But I could tell she was worried. The bridesmaids, her two closest friends since high school, started making calls to try and find out if the groom had a sudden illness. Soon they realized that Aiden's parents were there, but not his brother. They informed that their son was supposed to drive the groom as part of his best man duties. When the devastating news came, everyone wanted to comfort her. Everyone wanted desperately to protect her precious heart, but it was too torn apart to notice anyone else. It was all too fast and scary. A sports car ran a red light straight into the mirage. The man in the passenger seat was dead on arrival. The driver was taken to the hospital, but his state was critical. It was all so hard on everyone. Aiden's brother ended up surviving, but he'll be tetraplegic for life due to severe injury to his spinal cord. As far as I know, he's also miserable because he wished he could be the one who died. Right after the wedding that never happened, Pauline and Aiden's parents dealt with selling the house they had just bought, and Pauline continued living with her parents. They both still worked office jobs, so her other friends and I started taking turns keeping her company while they weren't home. I did my best to be there for my neighbor and friend, but she wasn't there. She was living in delusion, and the only thing you could see leaking into reality was her desolation. I never saw such a deep and heart-wrenching sadness. Pauline refused to take off her dress. She would spend the whole day by the window waiting for Aiden, and the whole night crying because she missed him desperately. Every single day. She was hopeful it was a matter of time until he woke up on the other side and remembered to bring her along. That's why she wouldn't take off the dress. He had died on his wedding suit, so it was only natural that she was up to par. Her parents and every single one of her friends tried to coax her into changing her clothes. We promised she could always keep the dress close for when Aiden came, but she knew that we didn't really believe he would. It was like promising your kid that you'd buy them a Happy Meal some other day. No one dared to penetrate her grief and force her out of the dress. She spent the day in it, slept in it, even bathed in it. Since we live in a warm and arid weather, having it dry wasn't an issue, only everything else. The once beautiful organza and silk were now ragged, grimy, and smelling, but she still refused to take it off. She started to believe that Aiden wouldn't be able to spot her in the crowd if she wasn't wearing it. It was impossible to change her mind, and even though she was seeing a therapist 3 times a week, she wasn't improving. Her mourning and PTSD were turning into a darker, more permanent illness. She started talking to Aiden, then explained to us that he was nearby, so she could feel him coming. He was just taking a while because flying is really hard when your wings are newly acquired. Then, one morning, she disappeared for good. No one saw her leaving, and no one saw her at all after that. The only thing that they were able to find in the small grove behind the house was her filthy wedding dress. It had 2 holes poked on her back, like it had grown wings. After finding the dress, everyone who loved Pauline was relieved. Her mother readily admitted that she actually believed that Aiden somehow had come back to take her. Others weren't so fond of the supernatural explanation, but thinking that there was a chance that it happened brought us a sense of closure. It's not that we were happy about her death, but we conformed to the possibility of her finally finding peace. She was an angel, after all. Why shouldn't she grow wings and escape her flesh prison? The family held a beautiful memorial service in her honor, and slowly we all started moving on with our lives. Now, you might ask what I believe in. I would laugh bitterly because I don't have this choice to begin with. Being the person who spent the most time watching Pauline during those days, it was only natural that I was the one who found her dead in the bathtub. Hiding and subsequently getting rid of her body was the hardest thing I have ever done. Tampering with the dress, though, was eerily healing. Still, I think that she would be pleased to know that I faked her rapture. A romantic and mystifying death fitted her way more than suicide. A Ritual Misguided, written by N.M. Brown. I've been a widower for exactly 6 years now. I was blissfully married to a woman named Ava for 15 amazing years. We didn't have much in the beginning, but we were happy that way. She always said she'd rather struggle with a man that she truly loved than to have luxury with a man that she didn't. Ava was good to me that way, never made me feel bad about anything. Anyway, 6 years ago today, she was taken from me. It was February 14th, and I wasn't feeling well. She had gone to the natural food market to get me some tea. Ava always made tea when I was sick, pampered me just like a loving mother would. She was just going down one of the aisles and whoosh, her life was snuffed out like a candle's flame. My wife just dropped dead right there in the spices section, 34 years old. She was healthier than I was. Just like that. One aneurysmal subarachnoid hemorrhage later, she was gone forever. I've tried to make it on my own, but I can't. Food has no taste, water quenches no thirst, and sleep provides no rest, not without Ava. I've prayed to heaven, to hell, to anyone that could bring her back. Finally, I resigned myself to the wonders of the internet. After days of searching, I finally find something, a kind of ritual. I have nothing to lose, and worst case scenario, nothing happens other than I've wasted some time and money. The items are collected and the ritual performed. I feel no different after, still just exhausted in every way one's spirit can be. Trying not to get my hopes up, I go to bed. After a fitful sleep, a cold, empty bed greets me in the morning. I guess I really don't expect much. Refusing to succumb to my dejection, I surrender myself to my daily routine. I drive to the store to buy some food for the dog and a pack of smokes. It was the one thing I wasn't able to do when Ava was alive. She hated smoking, especially the smell in my breath. Ashtray kisses, she'd say. The day was gorgeous, but it felt heavy to me for some reason. I guess everything feels heavy these days though. When your only purpose for the last 15 years has been to make someone happy, what do you do with yourself now that that purpose is gone? Halfway through the day, the door makes a strange squeak as I hear it open. I descend the stairs, confused but hopeful. There she is, my beautiful Ava. She looks amazing, younger than she did when she died, if you can believe that. She places a bag of groceries down on the counter and takes out a box of tea. Babe, what happened to the car? I drove it to the store. When I came out, it was gone, she explains. I had to call one of those Uber things. The guy had packs of Cheez-Its in his car. I got your tea, by the way. She kisses my cheek and pauses. Hey Maddie, did you do something different with the house? It looks so gloomy in here. Open some shit up, come on. Let some light in. Wait, were you smoking? Yeah, open the door, but leave the screen closed. She flirtatiously glares at me, then proceeds to flit around the house. cleaning and arranging like no years have passed at all. Cautiously, I walk up to her and touch her face, half expecting my hand to pass right through her, but it doesn't. Her warm face nuzzles into the groove of my hand, and her eyes close, absorbing the love of my touch. I hug her fiercely, and we made love like we haven't in years. Literally. I can't stop staring at her. My heart is so caught up in the relief from its torment that I can't bring myself to question everything now. Let me enjoy this first. Doubt can come tomorrow. 12 hours have gone by, when suddenly Ava screams. Her bones contort and her eyes freeze over. She clutches her heart and drops off the bed, rigid by the time she hits the ground. I faint, wake up, and it's morning again. Ava is lying there on her side, smiling at me, with no recollection of the night before. That first morning, I rush her to the doctor, explaining what I saw the previous night. They both stare at me with bewildered faces. Ava swears to him that she feels fine, and suggests that maybe I'm the one who needs to be checked out. As if this was a time for jokes. I watched her die. After everything comes back normal, he sends us home. But not before giving me a list of recommended therapists that accept our insurance. The rest of the week continues. Other than being a little more withdrawn due to plaguing images of a dying wife, things are great. I start to enjoy her more and more, my suspicion shrinking smaller and smaller every day that went by. After all, this is what I prayed for. She's back in my life. She didn't come back a rotted corpse. She's not full of evil carried over from the other side. She's just Ava. It was exactly 1 week to the day that she'd returned when I'm robbed of my security. The catch to my bargain was like the hand of death gripping at my throat. We're out driving and decide to pull over and go for a walk. The sky is just beginning to fill with the colors of the fading sun. Ava drops her phone on the sidewalk, and when I bend to retrieve it, she moves over to allow me room to do so. Just then, a truck swerves to avoid something large in the roadway, and Ava is hit. "Maddie, I love you," she cries out, seconds before impact. I see the beautiful blue of her eyes get lighter and lighter as her life fades. The crimson pool surrounding her blends in with her auburn hair. I call for an ambulance and hold my love as I wait for help, even though I know there is none. Nothing can help her now but the sweet release of the afterlife. They take her away and I sob hard. You would think the agony of seeing my wife die for the third time would take on an almost surreal kind of element to it. However, it becomes more and more devastating each time that it happens. Am I in hell? It feels that way. But I haven't really done anything in my life to deserve such a fate. Not to mention, I'm most definitely sure I'm not dead. My pounding headaches and constant sweat-stained nightmares make me sure of that. I awake the next morning, once again, to the chill of a cold, empty bed. This time though, I smell bacon. I can hear Ava's lovingly tone-deaf voice singing from the kitchen. However, as much as I want to rush to her, hold her, and join in song, I cannot move. My mind has a moment of true insanity, like the kind where you don't know if you're in a dream or you keep dreaming about waking up from a dream, but you're in another dream. It's madness. My mind shuts down as I struggle to sort out reality from its alternative. I continue to lay there motionless in a pool of sickly sweet-smelling sweat. Week after week, she leaves me, all in different ways. It seems like the more I try to keep her safe, the more violent her deaths become. She chokes on a homemade dinner I make the first week of September. She's struck down by a seizure that causes cardiac arrest the middle week of October. The third week of December, I thought I finally beat it. She lies down next to me and just falls asleep. There was no blood, no screams, no demons taking over her body movements. Just sleep. I leave to take some medicine, and when I come back, she is still there. I get so excited. I actually jump up and down with joy until I see that her eyes are open. They are fixed in a lifeless, 1,000-yard stare. The iris is almost a blue-white. Again, she is gone. So I lay there and hold her body until the morning breathed life back into it. I know the marble cold skin will be replaced by warm, breathing silk by the time I wake up again. Ashamedly, after about the 16th week, in a fit of insanity, I kill her myself. In the most respectfully loving way possible, if there even is such a thing. The look in her eyes as she realizes what I've done was worse than any death I had seen thus far. I think that look will stick with me the most. I see it in her smile when we make love, when she cries at something beautiful. I just wanted to change it, break the cycle. I'd try anything, but she would die and then be vibrant and beautiful the next morning, like nothing happened, over and over again. The cliched phrase, "careful what you wish for," plays through my brain like a broken record. You tell me, is it worth it? Would you be able to handle the mental anguish over and over again, just to have one more day? The same day with different events, all leading to the one you love's death. I have nightmares of waking up to her rotted face. "Till death do us apart, Maddie," she says as her lower lip falls into my lap. It's been almost a year now since it started. I'm rapidly losing my mind. How many times do I have to watch this? How many times do I have to watch this? As if once didn't burn it into my every thought. It will always be the last thing I see before I go to sleep, and the first thing I think about in the morning. Her image is perverting to me. Her eyes are starting to look the same alive as they do when she's dead. Wonder, written by Tim Chambers. The elderly man clutched the phone next to his ear. His face, a mask of concern. "How long is he going to be there?" he asked, his voice low to avoid drawing attention from the patrons wandering to the nightclub. He listened, then said, "How's he holding up?" A pause, then he nodded. "That's right. It's tomorrow, isn't it? I'll put together something for him. Something special." The man, his eyes weighed down by tired bags, closed the phone, then slipped it into the pocket of his worn sport jacket. He surveyed the nightclub he managed. The dim room held a sparse crowd, listening lazily to the half-hearted music produced by a second-rate guitarist on stage. The manager shook his head, as if that could just shake away thoughts of the phone call he'd just finished. The show must go on," he muttered. He went backstage and spotted the night's next performer. a tall, youthful figure in faded velvet and crimson gloves. The manager approached the magician. "Alright, kid, you're up next," he said. "The crowd's thin, they're not expecting much. Do your best, okay?" The magician adjusted his top hat and grinned, the smile reaching his piercing blue eyes. "Don't worry, they're in for something special." The guitarist wound down his lackluster act and shuffled off the stage without a word. A bored MC appeared, barely glancing at the sparse crowd scattered across the dingy room. Under the weak, flickering spotlight, he droned into the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the amazing Alex." His voice held the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. A few stray claps echoed weakly, drowned by the slurred laughter of a drunk perched at the bar. "Ah, great," the drunk jeered, swaying slightly. "Another rabbit out of the hat, clown." The magician mounted the stage. He bowed deeply, holding his pose for a moment, before straightening. He held out his arms in a welcoming gesture. "Good evening, ladies and, well, mostly gentlemen." The heckler belched, waving his drink dismissively. "Ah, yeah. So what are you gonna do?" The magician's jovial smile didn't falter. "Actually," he said, his voice dropping into something conspiratorial, "I'm not going to tell you what I'll do." The audience stirred, some leaning forward in their creaky chairs. "Instead, he swept a hand toward the crowd, "are going to tell me what I'll do." A ripple of murmurs waved through the room. The heckler snorted. "Oh, what a joke," he slurred. From the back row, an aggravated voice called out, clear and cutting, "Make that guy shut up." The magician's smile widened mischievously. "Granted," he said, and with a snap of his fingers, a puff of smoke erupted around the heckler. When it cleared, the drunk was clutching at his throat, eyes wide in surprise, his lips moving, but no sound escaping. The crowd laughed and offered a smattering of claps. A bold voice from up front shouted, He's just a plant." Alex perked up and grinned. "A plant, you say?" He snapped his fingers again, and another puff of smoke surrounded the drunk. When it dissipated, only a potted plant sat on the bar stool. The crowd laughed and offered appreciative applause. "Who's next?" asked the magician. The bold guy leaned forward again. 25 grand, right here." He slammed his hands on the table in front of him, the force of the gesture causing some of his beer to slosh over the rim of his glass. "Sorry," the magician replied with a playful smirk. "Only one trick to a customer." The bold guy grumbled a bit, but his protests soon petered out. Alex turned his gaze to a dejected-looking young couple nestled in the corner, their expressions as dim as the nightclub. "You, ma'am," the magician called, his voice smooth. "A penny for your thoughts?" With a flourish, he pulled a copper coin from her ear, holding it aloft like a trophy. The woman began hesitated. "Well, that guy's trick sounds good to me. I owe $25,000 in student debt. It'll take me 10 years of waiting tables to pay for the useless degree that I bought. So, 25 grand right here." She tapped on the table. "Granted," The magician closed his hand around the penny, and a cloud of smoke swallowed it. The audience gasped, eyes wide with anticipation. "There you are," he announced proudly, extending his hand to give the coin to the young woman. She stared at it, bemused. She nodded, as if she'd known all along that the magician wasn't for real. "Great, a penny," she sighed. 30,000 more and I can make next month's loan payment." She examined the coin a bit more, then announced, "It's not even the right color." This last observation drew the attention of her boyfriend, a numismatist, who took the coin and scrutinized it with the attention of a neurosurgeon. "White penny, steel, minted in 1944. Rare as hell. Even a circulated one of these goes for 30,000. He exclaimed, excited as a kid on Christmas. The young couple's spirits transmuted to confused hope. The small crowd buzzed with curiosity. Alex noticed the shift, sensing the electric energy building around him. He had their attention now, and knew from long experience that he'd keep it for the rest of the show. "Who's next?" he asked again, scanning the audience for the next willing participant, his eyes eager. His gaze fell upon another couple, who looked like they could be newlyweds, their spirits not dampened a bit by the bleak surroundings. The young woman hung onto her bow like a life preserver. The fellow spoke confidently. "True love," he said, paying his girlfriend a flirtatious wink. "We want true love." Alex's face softened. "True love, eh?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a deck of cards, fanning them out with a practiced flick of his wrist. "Pick a card," he said, extending the deck toward the man, who hesitated only briefly before pulling a card free. "Show it to everyone, except me, of course." The man turned the card around for the audience to see. Laughter enveloped the room as the crowd recognized the Queen of Hearts. The magician held out the deck to the young man. "Back into the deck, please." He shuffled the cards with a flourish, the cards whirring between his fingers as he rifled through them. "Now," the magician said, lowering his voice theatrically, "let's see where love takes us." He snapped his fingers. A spark jumped from his hands. He pulled out a card with a grand flourish. "Your true love," he declared, handing it to the man. The man flipped the card over, revealing the two of clubs. He frowned, visibly disappointed. He shook his head. The magician raised his eyebrows. "Oh dear," Alex exclaimed, his eyes widening in surprise. "I think I've made a mistake." Then, after letting a dramatic pause pass, he turned to the woman sitting next to the man. "Perhaps the queen of your heart should check her purse." The woman's spirits rose in expectant murmurs. The woman blinked, confused. "My purse?" "Yes," Alex insisted, gesturing toward her bag. "Have a look." With a bewildered expression, she reached into her purse and gasped. Slowly, she withdrew the Queen of Hearts, taped to which was a small velvet box. Her hand trembled as she opened the box to reveal an engagement ring inside. The audience burst into applause as the woman's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she cried, turning to her stunned boyfriend. "Yes, I'll marry you." The man looked genuinely astonished. He stammered, then grinned lopsidedly. He turned to Alex, who gave him a wink. He remembered his old mentor, Orion. "Magic isn't about fooling people," the old wizard had said. "It's about creating a sense of wonder." Alex surveyed the crowd, small but starry-eyed. "Thank you, Orion," he silently said. The manager approached the magician as the last of the crowd, bubbling with chatter about the show, trickled out of the club. The magician was packing away his props, carefully placing them into a small leather case. His velvet coat hung loosely off his shoulders. His eyes still twinkled with the residual thrill of the evening's performance. "Hey kid," the manager said, lighting a cigarette. He glanced around the emptying room with a frown. "You did good out there, real good. I don't know how the hell you did that ring trick, but they ate it up." Alex smiled, but didn't stop packing his gear. "The best tricks are the simplest ones," he said cryptically. "But what about Tommy?" the manager pressed. "Tommy?" "The drunk," explained the manager. "Where'd you hide him?" Replied the magician, grinning. "He's someplace safe. A bit confused, maybe, but he's alright." The manager thought about pursuing the matter, but let it pass. A generation of experience with a generation of stage magicians told him that asking about the tricks was useless. Illusionists never explained their secrets. "Listen," the manager continued, rubbing the back of his neck. "How do you feel about doing another show? You've got a booking here as long as you want." The magician shook his head, his movements deliberate. "Sorry, only one show to a venue. A promise to my master." The manager exhaled smoke, letting the silence linger before chuckling. "I can't say I blame you. I'd hightail it out of this dump if I could." Alex smiled, then returned his attention to his packing. The manager hesitated, as the gem of an idea dawned upon him. He flicked away the cigarette. "Hey, how about doing a birthday party?" The magician raised a curious eyebrow, his interest piqued. "A birthday party?" he repeated, his tone neutral, but a hint of curiosity creeping in. The manager nodded, pulling out a wad of bills from his pocket. He fanned them out. The crisp 20s crinkled. "I can make it worth your while." The magician glanced at the money, but remained unmoved. He started to turn away. "It's not about the money," the manager added quickly, his voice dropping lower. "It's my grandson." Alex paused, looking up at the manager now. Something shifted inside him. "He could really use a boost, you know," the manager continued, his whole heart behind his words. "He's angry about a lot of things. I thought maybe a little magic might lift his spirits." He sighed deeply, as if the world was burdening his shoulders. "His birthday's tomorrow. He's turning 11. "Maybe," Alex murmured. "Tell me more." As the manager described the gig, the magician's grin grew wider and wider. The children, glad for a chance to escape the boredom of the hospital's pediatric ward, sat eagerly at the cafeteria's tables. Some of the children, though less infirm ones, even bounced in their seats, awaiting the arrival of a man the nurses had called the magician. The anxious waiting was interrupted by a pop, a cloud of smoke exploding in the corner of the room. When the haze cleared, there stood the magician, his faded velvet coat hanging a little loose on his frame. An open, friendly smile appeared across his face. A nurse standing nearby blinked in surprise, mesmerized by the magician's materialization. One little girl, frail but awestruck, whispered, "Where'd you come from?" Before the magician could respond, a sharp voice erupted. "What's the point of this?" The speaker was a boy, his head bald from treatments. He glared at the magician with eyes far too old for his 11 years. "It's bad enough that I have to stay in the..." He made air quotes with his fingers. "Children's ward. But they really think I'm gonna feel better by some cape dimwit pulling rabbits out of hats? Please." The magician held the boy's fierce gaze with a steady calm. "No rabbits or silly hats here," he said softly. "Just a humble entertainer, trying to make a little magic, if you let me." The awestruck girl chimed in again. "What tricks are you gonna do?" As if on cue, the magician bowed. "Actually," he said, taking on his practical, conspiratorial tone, "I'm not going to tell you what I'll do. Instead, you," he swept a hand toward the children, "are going to tell me what I'll do." The boy was unimpressed. His eyes narrowed. "Fine," he said. "You want to do a trick? Okay. I wish for a brontosaurus. Let's see you do that." His voice dripped with sarcasm. The magician's lips curved into a smile, but there was something deeper in his gaze now. Something that shimmered with both understanding and a trace of sorrow. "Granted," he said, with a flourish of his hand. He snapped his fingers, exploded with a flash. The beast was the size of a cat, but otherwise, it looked like a denizen of Jurassic Park. The children looked on in astonishment as the tiny, toy-sized brontosaurus meandered at the boy's feet, staring befuddled at the door, its dull eyes searching for a patch of grass. The boy eyed the mini dino with a skeptical gaze. "Cool hologram," he laughed acridly. But the boy's mouth fell open when he reached out toward the gentle beast, and his finger met a solid skin that felt like leather. The brontosaurus flickered, then vanished. "Unfortunately," the magician said, "the hospital doesn't allow pets on the ward, but I'll see that he's waiting for you at home when..." "Make me better," the boy blurted, a flash of hope, raw, desperate hope, suddenly blazing in his eyes. He clenched his fists, his voice trembling as he said, "Make me better. That's what I want. I wish to be better." The magician looked stricken. His smile faltered. He winced with pain. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "But one trick to a customer." The boy's face crumpled, tears springing to his eyes. Silence hung over the room for a long moment. The magician, his heart heavy, turned again to the awestruck girl, whose eyes were wide and still gleaming. With a soft smile, Alex said, "A penny for your thoughts?" He drew a penny from her ear and offered it to her. "What trick would you like to see?" The girl looked up at him, her small, pale hand reaching out to take the penny. She thought for a moment, then looked over at the boy, her expression as gentle as velvet. "I like his idea," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She glanced back at the magician. "I want for him to get better. Now, it was the magician who was awestruck. He searched his memory, which spanned more decades than anyone would believe, for a moment where a request had inspired him with such wonder. People's wishes, especially grown-ups' wishes, were usually so small: money and status, pep in their love lives, and an occasional demand for raw power. The magician felt a singular thrill of cheer as he raised his hand to snap his fingers. "This might just be my best trick ever," he confided to the girl in a stage whisper.